Have you ever wondered how one single decision could transform your life completely? What if I told you that the key to unlocking your full potential, improving your self-discipline, and living a more focused life is hidden in just one simple choice? It's not about willpower or relying on motivation that fades. It's about making a decision that changes everything from your habits to your mindset. In this video, we're going to explore the incredible impact of a single decision that changed one person's self-control forever. This decision wasn't something grand or complicated. In fact, it's something you could do too. But here's the twist. It wasn't about adding something new to their routine or following a trendy self-help tip. No, it was about removing something that had been sabotaging their ability to focus, make good decisions, and ultimately control their actions. Stay with me as we dive into how this one choice took them from feeling stuck, overwhelmed, and out of control to being a master of their own destiny. By the end of this video, you'll understand how a simple yet powerful decision could transform your own self-control forever. So if you've ever struggled with staying on track, battling temptations, or finding it hard to stick to your goals, you're not going to want to miss this. Let's get started. What if I told you that the key to transforming your self-control doesn't lie in trying harder or forcing yourself to be disciplined? What if it was as simple as removing distractions and making your environment work in your favor? This is exactly what happened when one man made a seemingly small but incredibly powerful decision that altered his life forever. It all began with a moment of realization, a quiet yet profound acknowledgement that the constant noise and chaos around him were draining his energy, focus, and willpower. The decision to change everything started with something so simple, yet so powerful, that it's hard to believe how effective it really was. And no, it wasn't an overnight fix or some complicated life hack. It was the act of eliminating something that most of us overlook in our daily lives: the clutter, distractions, and noise we surround ourselves with, both mentally and physically. The truth is, we are constantly bombarded by distractions. From our phones to endless to-do lists, social media notifications, constant work emails, and even the noise in our physical space, it's no wonder that staying focused, making decisions, and exercising self-control has become increasingly difficult. We live in a world that's designed to grab our attention at every turn. But what if we could change that? What if we could take control of what we let into our lives, and by doing so, regain the self-discipline we've been struggling to maintain? It was when this person realized the overwhelming weight of distractions in his life that he decided to make a bold move. He decided to make a deliberate and conscious choice to clear out his mental and physical space, simplifying his daily routine. This wasn't about forcing himself to be more productive or pushing through with more self-discipline. No, it was about creating an environment that supported his goals, rather than working against them. And let me tell you, this decision made all the difference. The first step he took was cleaning up his physical environment. We often underestimate the effect our surroundings have on our mindset. Clutter, both physical and digital, has a psychological impact that can make it harder to focus and stay on task. So this individual started by decluttering his space. He cleared off his desk, cleaned out his drawers, and reorganized his workspace in a way that felt more aligned with his goals. It wasn't a major overhaul, but the act of tidying up created a sense of calm and order that allowed him to think more clearly and make better decisions throughout the day. Next, he took a hard look at the digital clutter that was distracting him. He realized that he was spending too much time checking his phone, scrolling through social media, and responding to constant notifications. It was eating into his precious time and energy, leaving him feeling overwhelmed and unable to focus on the important tasks at hand. So he made a decision. No more checking emails first thing in the morning or scrolling through social media during work hours. Instead, he designated specific times to check these things, allowing him to focus on deep work without constant interruptions. And the results were incredible. But it wasn't just about removing distractions from his environment. He also recognized that his mind was cluttered with negative thoughts, doubts, and worries that were draining his mental energy. So he made the conscious decision to practice mindfulness and positive thinking. By focusing on the present moment and eliminating unnecessary mental chatter, he was able to direct his attention to what truly mattered. And over time, this decision helped him build a stronger sense of self-control and mental clarity. So, what did this decision really accomplish? It freed him from the chaos of constant distractions and allowed him to tap into a deep well of focus and productivity. He started achieving more with less effort. He found himself making better decisions, staying on task for longer periods, and feeling a sense of satisfaction at the end of each day. But here's the most profound part. His self-control didn't just improve in his work life. It began to spill over into other areas of his life too. As he got better at managing his environment, both physically and mentally, he began to notice a shift in his personal life as well. He found himself making healthier choices, exercising more regularly, and eating better. He realized that when he had control over his surroundings and his mental state, he had more energy and discipline to take care of himself. His relationships also improved because he was more present and engaged with others, instead of being distracted by his own inner chaos or external noise. The key takeaway here is that self-control isn't just about forcing yourself to stay disciplined. It's about creating an environment that supports your goals and allows you to focus on what truly matters. By removing distractions, simplifying your life, and decluttering both your physical space and your mind, you give yourself the best possible chance to make better decisions and exercise more self-discipline. Now you might be thinking, this sounds great, but can a simple change really have that much of an impact? Well, the truth is, this decision didn't just lead to incremental improvements. It sparked a complete transformation in the way this person approached life. By clearing the noise and distractions, he was able to tap into his true potential and unlock a level of self-control that he never had was possible. This wasn't a one-time effort either. It was a conscious, ongoing decision to create an environment that continually reinforced his goals and helped him stay on track. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, unfocused, or like you just can't seem to stay disciplined, it might be time to make a change. Start by looking at the distractions in your life, both physical and mental, and ask yourself, what can I eliminate to create more space for the things that matter most? Whether it's cleaning up your workspace, turning off notifications, or practicing mindfulness, taking control of your environment is the first step toward transforming your self-control. And just like the person in this story, you might find that this small change leads to extraordinary results. The power is in your hands. The decision is yours. There's a moment in everyone's life when we realize that our willpower is just as much about what we avoid as what we actively pursue. You might think self-control is all about pushing yourself harder, about sheer grit and determination, overcome temptations. But what if I told you that sometimes the key to improving self-discipline is less about what you do and more about what you choose not to do? This realization came when this man, after months of struggling to stay disciplined and consistent, made a decision that revolutionized his entire approach to life. And it all started with one simple but powerful choice. He chose to eliminate the things that drained his energy and focus. Think about your typical day. If you're like most people, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that you need to work harder to get things done. But the truth is, the more we try to force ourselves into doing things, the more stressed we become. We often overlook one of the most important factors in achieving lasting self-control: what we decide not to engage with. The decision to stop pursuing distractions, temptations, and things that zap our energy is what makes all the difference. This man had spent years being constantly pulled in different directions. He was dealing with the pressure of a full-time job, a busy family life, and the demands of social engagements. He was trying to juggle too many things at once, and as a result, his self-control seemed to be slipping away. But there was one crucial moment that would set him on a path of transformation. After an intense period of frustration, he realized something profound. He was exhausting his mental reserves by engaging with things that weren't serving him. His environment, filled with distractions and demands, was keeping him in a constant state of decision fatigue. In other words, his inability to maintain discipline wasn't because he wasn't trying enough. It was because his energy was being drained by unnecessary clutter, both mentally and physically. It was in this moment of clarity that he made the decision that changed everything. He stopped trying to do everything. He decided to step away from unnecessary commitments, remove the chaos, and simplify his routine. At first, this felt uncomfortable. After all, he was used to being a busy person, someone who took pride in staying active and juggling multiple tasks. But as he soon discovered, the more he simplified, the better his self-control became. The first thing he tackled was his commitments. He realized that he had been saying yes to too many things out of obligation, fear of disappointing others, or the pressure to appear busy. It wasn't that he didn't care about these responsibilities, but he had spread himself too thin. The decision to start saying no was one of the hardest yet most liberating things he had ever done. It wasn't about avoiding responsibility, but about eliminating distractions that drained his energy. He started by reassessing the commitments that didn't truly serve his long-term goals or well-being. He found that by saying no to certain things, he created space to focus on what mattered most: his health, his personal growth, and his close relationships. But that wasn't all. The next step was examining his digital habits. Like many of us, he was glued to his phone, constantly checking emails, scrolling through social media, and falling into the trap of endless distractions. Each ping and notification would pull him away from his work and his personal goals, leaving him feeling scattered and unfocused. He had become a slave to his devices, and it wasn't until he consciously stepped back from this behavior that he saw the impact it had on his mental clarity. He realized that by reducing his screen time, he not only eliminated distractions, but also freed up mental space for more important tasks. This shift wasn't just about cutting down on time spent on his phone. It was about reclaiming his time and energy. He created specific blocks in his day for checking emails and social media, rather than letting them dictate his every move. This simple decision gave him back control over his life. And as he started becoming more mindful of his digital habits, he found that his ability to focus for longer periods dramatically improved. Now, what happened next might surprise you. As he began eliminating distractions from his life, he found that his ability to stay disciplined wasn't just about what he was avoiding, it was about what he was now focusing on. With fewer distractions and more mental clarity, he had the energy to commit to his goals with more intensity. Whether it was dedicating time to working out, reading, or even spending quality time with his family, he found that he was more present and engaged in everything he did. He wasn't just making better decisions, he was making smarter ones. But the benefits didn't stop there. His new approach didn't just give him back his time, it also gave him a sense of empowerment. In simplifying his life, he found that his self-control wasn't something he needed to constantly force. It became natural. The more he let go of unnecessary demands, the more his mental strength grew. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the need to exercise constant discipline, he found that it became easier to stick to his routines. Whether it was choosing to eat healthier, get more sleep, or resist temptations, his ability to stay in control of his decisions skyrocketed. It's often said that our environment shapes us, and in this case, it couldn't be truer. The more he cleared away the distractions, the more he was able to shape his own environment to work in his favor. By saying no to the things that drained him, he was able to say yes to the things that fueled him. And in doing so, he found that his self-control wasn't an uphill battle. It was something that flowed naturally. His journey wasn't perfect. There were moments of doubt and temptation, but the key was that he had created an environment that supported his goals. Every decision he made to eliminate distractions made it easier to stay on course. And with each passing day, his sense of self-control and clarity only deepened. The lesson here is simple, yet profound. To improve your self-control, you don't always need to try harder or force yourself. Sometimes the key is in what you decide not to do. By eliminating distractions, simplifying your life, and creating space for what truly matters, you can radically transform your ability to make better decisions, stay focused, and stick to your goals. This isn't about pushing yourself harder. It's about giving yourself permission to step back, clear the noise, and focus on what's truly important. In the journey of transforming self-control, we often overlook one powerful factor: the role of habits. The decisions we make every single day often feel insignificant in the moment. We don't realize that these little daily choices are actually shaping our lives in profound ways. But this man discovered something that completely altered his approach to self-discipline: the power of intentional habits. It was a decision, not just to make changes, but to create routines that would support his goals and reinforce his sense of self-control, without him even thinking about it. This was a game changer for him, and it could be for you too. When he first started on his journey to improve self-control, he realized something simple yet profound. Self-discipline is not always about forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do. It's about creating systems and habits that make discipline easy. He began by focusing on habits that didn't require willpower every single day. The beauty of habits is that they work in the background. Once you establish a routine, it becomes automatic. And when done right, they shape your life without requiring constant mental effort. Take, for example, the act of exercising. We all know it's good for our health, but sticking to a regular fitness routine can be difficult. At first, he tried to use sheer willpower, pushing himself to hit the gym every day. But the truth is, relying on motivation and force alone wasn't sustainable. Instead, he shifted his approach to building a habit. He didn't focus on the occasional bursts of motivation to work out. Instead, he made it a part of his routine. By setting a specific time for his workout each day, he transformed it into a non-negotiable part of his day, much like brushing his teeth. But it didn't stop there. He didn't just add exercise to his routine, he made sure to track his progress. Every small victory reinforced the habit, making him more likely to keep going. And over time, it didn't feel like he was pushing himself anymore. It felt natural. His self-control was no longer a daily struggle, but a consistent and automatic part of his life. He didn't need motivation, his habits had taken over. And through this process, his willpower wasn't drained, it was actually being strengthened. By committing to small positive habits, he was subconsciously improving his self-discipline, without even realizing how much progress he was making. But self-control isn't only about sticking to healthy habits like exercise. It's also about eliminating the negative ones, the behaviors that we've normalized without thinking. Take, for instance, his relationship with food. In the past, he found himself constantly snacking on junk food when stressed or bored. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience. It was a major drain on his physical health and mental clarity. He realized that in order to regain control over his life, he needed to address this bad habit head-on. So instead of trying to exert willpower every time he felt the urge to snack, he decided to set up a new habit to replace the old one. He started by preparing healthier snacks in advance. Instead of waiting until he felt hunger pangs or stress, he made sure that healthier options were always available to him. This simple shift helped him avoid the temptation of unhealthy snacks. He didn't have to fight his cravings every day. The new habit of having healthy foods readily available made it easier to stick to his goals. Soon enough, this new habit became automatic as well. He wasn't thinking about food choices anymore, and he isn't using willpower to say no to junk food. The habit itself carried him forward, reducing the mental effort needed to stay disciplined. Through all of this, he learned a powerful truth about self-control. You don't always have to fight with yourself. You just need to replace the behaviors that drain you with ones that empower you. The key to mastering self-discipline wasn't about trying harder. It was about simplifying. It was about creating routines and habits that made it easy to say yes to things that aligned with his goals and no to the distractions that held him back. It's easy to get discouraged when trying to change your life, especially when you feel like you're relying solely on willpower. But here's the good news. When you focus on building intentional habits, it doesn't require constant mental struggle. In fact, the more you practice these habits, the less mental energy they take up. Over time, these habits turn into systems that support your long-term success, almost effortlessly. His success wasn't about drastic changes. It was about taking small, consistent steps every day that accumulated into something significant. And it wasn't just about fitness or food. This mindset shift affected every area of his life, from how he managed his time to how he interacted with people. By creating positive habits, he built an environment where self-control didn't feel like a battle. It felt like a natural part of his life. The more he practiced intentional habits, the easier it became to make the right decisions, and the more self-discipline flowed effortlessly from one area of his life to another. This is the power of habits. By focusing on what we can control, our daily actions and routines, we can effortlessly improve our self-discipline over time. Rather than using force to make good decisions, we can create systems that set us up for success. So if you're struggling with self-control, ask yourself, what small, intentional habit can you start today to make the right decisions easier tomorrow? By focusing on making positive habits automatic, you might just find that self-control becomes a natural part of who you are, with little effort required. Self-control isn't a trait that you either have or don't have. It's a skill that can be cultivated, refined, and perfected over time. We'll be diving into a concept that most people overlook when trying to improve their self-discipline: the environment you create for yourself. Think about it. How often have you found yourself in situations where you make a good decision, only to end up in a setting that tempts you to make the wrong choice? The thing is, your environment has a far greater impact on your ability to maintain self-control than you might think. The simple truth is this: if you want to transform your self-control forever, you need to control your environment, because your environment directly influences your habits, choices, and actions. Let me take you back to the time when this individual, let's call him Michael, first realized the importance of his environment. At the start of his journey, he was highly motivated. He was following routines, making healthier decisions, and feeling empowered. But then he would slip. Little by little, he found himself straying from the path he had set out for himself. It wasn't because he lacked willpower. It was because he was constantly surrounded by distractions that made it so easy to fall into old habits. Michael's environment was filled with triggers. His desk was cluttered with junk food. His smartphone was within arm's reach with constant notifications, and he was spending time with people who didn't share his commitment to growth. The environment was simply not supportive of the changes he wanted to make. Every time he was in those settings, his resolve weakened. This realization was a game changer for him. He knew that if he wanted to build stronger self-control, he needed to reshape his surroundings. This wasn't a simple tweak, it was a full-blown strategy. Michael started with the most obvious change. He decluttered his physical space. His desk, which was always covered with snacks and distractions, was now completely clear. He removed the chips, the candy, and anything else that tempted him during the day. At first, it seemed like a small change, but it had a massive impact. By eliminating those visual triggers, he reduced the temptation to indulge. When there was nothing to grab, his mind wasn't as preoccupied with thoughts of eating junk food, and he found that his ability to focus on the task at hand dramatically increased. But that wasn't the whole story. Michael didn't stop at just clearing his desk. He realized that his smartphone was one of the biggest culprits in sabotaging his focus and productivity. Social media, constant text messages, and emails. Every ping was an invitation to fall into the distraction trap. So he took action. He started by setting up boundaries with his phone. He removed unnecessary apps, limited notifications, and set specific times when he would check his messages or social media accounts. These small, simple changes helped him regain control over his time and attention. But the real turning point came when he started thinking about the people around him. It's not enough to change your immediate surroundings. You also need to consider the influence of the people you spend the most time with. Michael had always been surrounded by people who didn't prioritize their health, their personal development, or their goals in the same way he did. They didn't intentionally sabotage his efforts, but their habits and energy often pulled him back into bad patterns. He knew that in order to truly succeed, he needed to create a circle of people who supported his growth, not hindered it. So Michael made a conscious decision to spend more time with individuals who shared his values. He joined groups where personal growth was at the forefront, sought out mentors who had mastered self-control, and distanced himself from relationships that drained his energy. What Michael realized over time was that, by controlling his environment, both physical and social, he made it much easier to stick to his goals. He didn't need to summon all his willpower every day. Instead, he created a system where the environment itself encouraged his success. His new habits became reinforced not by external motivation, but by the support system he had built around him. The best part, he no longer had to fight temptations every minute of the day. His surroundings supported his goals, making it effortless to maintain focus, control his impulses, and stay committed to the life he wanted to create. So let's break down the key lessons from Michael's experience. First, your physical environment is a major influence on your self-control. The more distractions and temptations you have in your immediate surroundings, the harder it is to maintain discipline. By removing or limiting these distractions, you can reduce the cognitive load of decision-making and make it easier to stay focused on what truly matters. The second lesson: your digital environment matters too. With smartphones and technology constantly demanding our attention, it's easy to fall prey to distractions. Taking control of your digital space by setting boundaries and limiting notifications can significantly improve your ability to focus and stay disciplined. The third, and perhaps most profound lesson, is that your social environment shapes your success. If you want to strengthen your self-control, it's important to surround yourself with people who support your goals and share your values. Being around individuals who prioritize growth and discipline makes it easier to stay on track because you are constantly exposed to the behaviors and mindsets that you aspire to adopt. Once Michael understood the power of his environment, he felt like he had unlocked a new level of control. His success wasn't based on trying to muscle through temptations or relying on sheer willpower. It was based on designing a life where his environment made the right choices easier. And this is the key takeaway for you. If you want to truly transform your self-control, you must take a hard look at the environment you've created for yourself. It's not enough to just rely on motivation. You need to make sure your surroundings are working in your favor. Whether it's your home, your workspace, or the people you interact with, everything you surround yourself with has an impact on your ability to stick to your goals. By making intentional changes to your environment, you'll find that your self-control becomes less of a battle and more of a natural, effortless process. So take a moment to assess your own environment. What changes can you make today to create a space that supports your goals? The good news is that these changes don't have to be drastic, but the impact they can have on your self-discipline and long-term success will be nothing short of transformational. The importance of consistency cannot be overstated, and it's something that Michael, the individual we've been following, learned in a way that completely shifted his approach to life. Here's why consistency is such a game changer when it comes to self-discipline. It's not about performing extraordinary feats every single day, but rather about making small, positive actions a regular part of your routine. It's not the one-off successes that make a difference in the long run. It's the gradual accumulation of consistent efforts that build a resilient self-control system. Michael had always been someone who thrived on motivation. He thought that if he could just get really motivated, he would finally be able to accomplish his goals. But he quickly realized that motivation is fleeting. Some days he would feel on top of the world, ready to take on anything. Other days, he would feel like he had no energy left to even get out of bed. Motivation was not a dependable resource. It was an emotional state, and like all emotions, it came and went. This realization led him to discover something more powerful: consistency. Instead of trying to wait for motivation to strike, Michael began to build habits that didn't depend on how he felt each day. He knew that success wasn't about having a huge burst of energy to tackle everything at once. It was about showing up every day, regardless of how he felt. And that's exactly what changed his self-control forever. For example, Michael had always struggled with exercise. At the start of his journey, he would go all in, intense workouts for 2 or 3 days, followed by long stretches of inactivity. He was motivated to see fast results, but those bursts of activity only led to burnout. Eventually, he learned that the key wasn't pushing himself to the brink of exhaustion, but rather committing to something he could do consistently. He started small. Instead of committing to an hour-long workout every day, he set a more attainable goal: 20 minutes of movement each day. It didn't matter if it was a brisk walk, a yoga session, or light stretching. What mattered was that he showed up every day. The focus was on the action, not the intensity. The first few days were difficult, but as time went on, Michael realized that his body was getting used to the rhythm. It didn't require an enormous amount of willpower to keep moving, because the habit was solidifying. It wasn't about needing motivation to hit the gym for an hour. It was about setting aside 20 minutes, no matter what, and making it a non-negotiable part of his day. What Michael didn't realize at the time was that this shift in mindset, this emphasis on consistency over intensity, was the foundation for his new sense of self-control. By focusing on small, sustainable actions, he was able to reinforce his commitment to health, rather than expecting dramatic results that would require constant motivation. Over the course of several months, those small, consistent workouts added up. The results didn't come in massive leaps, but they were steady and unmistakable. Michael was stronger, more energized, and more confident in his ability to maintain his health for the long haul. His self-discipline was no longer dependent on his mood. It was ingrained in his daily routine. But here's the thing about consistency. It's not just about the small actions we take, it's also about the mindset shift, that happens when we understand that slow, steady progress is still progress. We live in a world that glorifies quick fixes and instant results. Think about the countless miracle diets, quick weight loss programs, and productivity hacks we're constantly sold. The promise is always the same: fast results with minimal effort. But what Michael learned, and what many of us need to realize, is that real change doesn't happen in one explosive moment. It happens incrementally, day by day, through sustained effort. This is where true self-control comes into play. It's about being patient and persistent, even when the rewards aren't immediately visible. In Michael's case, he knew that if he wanted to build lasting self-control, he couldn't rely on intermittent bursts of effort. He couldn't let himself get discouraged by days that didn't feel productive, because he knew that consistency is what would ultimately lead to lasting change. It's the same idea as planting a seed. You water it every day, but you won't see the full-grown tree right away. If you give up too soon, you'll never see the fruit of your labor. But if you stay consistent, even in small ways, you'll eventually see the payoff. And this principle goes beyond just physical habits. When Michael set out to improve his focus and mental discipline, he applied the same strategy of small, consistent actions. Instead of expecting himself to be ultra-focused for hours at a time, he broke his work into manageable chunks. He set a timer for 30-minute work sessions, followed by 5-minute breaks. This simple technique, known as the Pomodoro technique, helped him maintain a level of focus that he never thought possible. The key wasn't in the intensity or the duration. It was in the consistency of showing up for his work, even on days when it felt difficult. As Michael's routine evolved, so did his ability to self-regulate. He realized that self-control wasn't about being perfect every day. It was about showing up, day in and day out, and maintaining a sense of discipline, no matter the circumstances. Even when things weren't going perfectly, he knew that consistency was what would get him closer to his goals. He didn't have to be perfect, but he did need to keep moving forward. One of the most important realizations Michael had was that consistency doesn't just apply to actions. It also applies to your internal dialogue. He used to beat himself up when he slipped up, telling himself that he had ruined everything with one bad decision. But as he started focusing on consistency, he learned that a single misstep didn't mean failure. It was just a part of the process. When you're committed to long-term growth, setbacks are just bumps in the road, not the end of the journey. The key was to get back on track and keep moving forward, without getting bogged down by self-criticism. Now let's talk about how this idea of consistency can translate to your own life. You may have heard the saying, the secret to success is showing up. But showing up consistently is where the magic happens. Think about the areas of your life where you're trying to improve, whether it's health, work, relationships, or personal growth. The temptation to wait until you feel motivated or inspired is strong, but the real secret is in developing the habit of consistency, even on days when you don't feel like it. Whether it's getting up early to work out, dedicating time to study, or spending quality time with loved ones, consistency in your actions, no matter how small, will compound over time. Those small actions will accumulate into big results. The trick is to focus less on perfection and more on showing up every day. Over time, this consistency will become part of who you are, and self-control will no longer feel like a constant battle. Michael's journey shows us that self-control isn't about sheer willpower. It's about making a commitment to yourself to stay consistent, even when motivation fades. By embracing consistency as a guiding principle, you can transform your self-discipline and ultimately your life. So ask yourself, where can you start being more consistent today? The answer doesn't have to be grand. It can be as simple as making your bed every morning, committing to 10 minutes of exercise, or reading a chapter of a book each day. Start small, and remember, consistency is the key to lasting self-control. Keep showing up, keep moving forward, and watch how it transforms your life. Self-control is often portrayed as an all-or-nothing trait. Either you have it or you don't. This kind of thinking can be disempowering, making you feel as if you're either born with incredible willpower or destined to fail. But the truth is, self-control is a skill that anyone can develop. It's not about some magical switch that's either on or off. It's about continuously practicing and strengthening the habit of self-discipline. And one of the most powerful practices that helped Michael, who we've been following, transform his self-control forever, was the power of delayed gratification. Delayed gratification is a concept that most of us are familiar with, even if we don't consciously practice it every day. Simply put, it's the ability to resist the temptation for an immediate reward in favor of a more valuable long-term goal. While it may sound simple in theory, it's one of the hardest skills to develop. Our modern world is filled with instant gratification. Social media notifications, fast food streaming services, shopping apps, all offering us quick rewards. But it's exactly this environment that makes the practice of delayed gratification so crucial. It's not just about resisting temptation, it's about developing a mindset that prioritizes long-term success over short-term pleasure. For Michael, this concept didn't come easily. He was just like most people, constantly seeking instant rewards. Whether it was scrolling through social media or grabbing a quick snack to satisfy his hunger, he would often make choices that gave him short-term pleasure at the expense of his long-term goals. But as he started to understand how self-control worked, he realized that making decisions based on immediate gratification wasn't just slowing him down, it was holding him back. One day, Michael stumbled upon a simple yet profound concept. Every time he gave in to an instant reward, he was making a trade-off. The pleasure of the immediate reward might feel good in the moment, but it was a short-term satisfaction that in the long run contributed little to his bigger goals. On the other hand, delaying gratification, whether it was resisting a sugary snack, staying off his phone for an hour to focus on work, or saying no to a night out in favor of an early morning workout, was a choice that paid off over time. The real challenge, he realized, was learning how to make those small choices every day consistently. One of the most powerful examples of this for Michael was with his finances. In the past, he had struggled with impulsive spending, buying things he didn't need just for the sake of momentary enjoyment. But after realizing how delayed gratification could empower his financial future, he shifted his approach. Instead of spending money on temporary pleasures, he started saving and investing with the long-term goal of financial security. And over time, the results spoke for themselves. The sacrifices he made, like skipping the daily coffee run or avoiding spontaneous shopping trips, paid off in bigger, more meaningful ways. His financial situation improved dramatically, and he was able to build a sense of freedom and security that he had never imagined before. But the practice of delayed gratification isn't just about financial goals, it's about how you approach every decision in your life. Michael learned that practicing self-control through delayed gratification in one area of his life often translated into other areas as well. By learning to say no to distractions in the moment, he gained more focus, which allowed him to stay on track with his professional projects. And by resisting unhealthy food choices, he was able to improve his health and well-being, which in turn gave him more energy and motivation to stay disciplined in other areas of his life. What Michael discovered, and what many people miss, is that the act of delaying gratification isn't about denying yourself all pleasure. It's not about punishing yourself or living a life of deprivation. Instead, it's about consciously choosing what kind of rewards you want and which ones are worth pursuing. Delaying gratification is about making the decisions today that will benefit you tomorrow. It's a skill that requires practice, patience, and perspective, but the rewards are profound. For example, when Michael learned how to say no to small pleasures like watching TV instead of reading, or eating unhealthy snacks when he wasn't truly hungry, he created space for better, more meaningful rewards. In place of the fleeting satisfaction of mindless consumption, he was rewarded with a deeper sense of accomplishment, greater knowledge, better health, and stronger relationships. And the best part, the more he practiced delayed gratification, the easier it became. It wasn't a constant struggle, it became a habit, ingrained in his daily routine. But let's not pretend it's always easy. Delayed gratification doesn't always feel good in the moment. It's tough when you're staring at a delicious treat, or when a part of you is desperate for immediate relaxation. But what Michael learned was that this short-term discomfort was always outweighed by the long-term benefits. And the more he practiced, the more confident he became in his ability to make the right choices. The most surprising part of his journey was realizing how much delayed gratification affects not just the big, life-altering goals, but the small, everyday choices. Each time he resisted the urge for something immediate, he strengthened his self-control muscle. Over time, this built an incredible sense of inner strength, something Michael had never had before. The key to his transformation wasn't just about resisting temptation once in a while. It was about making a habit of resisting the constant pull for instant rewards. Slowly, but surely, he was able to make the long-term benefits of self-control outweigh the short-term pleasures. Now think about your own life for a moment. What are the things you consistently give into for the sake of short-term satisfaction? It might be eating unhealthy foods, procrastinating on important tasks, spending time on distractions when you should be working, or indulging in habits that only offer momentary pleasure. If you can relate, it's time to start practicing the art of delayed gratification. Begin small. Say no to something small today. It could be as simple as turning off your phone for an hour to focus on work, or choosing to go for a walk instead of indulging in an unhealthy snack. Each time you make the conscious choice to delay a reward for something better, you are strengthening your ability to practice self-control. Over time, these small choices compound and lead to a life of greater self-discipline, focus, and success. So what can we learn from Michael's journey? Delayed gratification isn't just a tactic for success, it's a mindset shift. It's the decision to prioritize long-term rewards over instant pleasures. And once you start practicing it consistently, you'll notice your self-control growing stronger with each passing day. The more you practice, the easier it gets, and the more you focus on what you truly want in life, rather than chasing fleeting satisfactions, the more you'll see your life transforming for the better. When Michael first started his transformation, he believed that self-control was something he had to force himself into, almost like an all-or-nothing task. But what he came to realize over time was that the small decisions were the real game changers. The choice to get up and move for 5 minutes instead of scrolling on his phone. Choosing to say no to that extra piece of cake at a dinner party. Deciding to stick to a task even when distractions were calling his name. These were the moments that made all the difference. What Michael discovered is that self-control isn't just about resisting temptation. It's about building habits that naturally align with your goals. The process doesn't have to be a constant battle of willpower. Instead, it's about creating systems that make self-control almost automatic. For instance, by planning ahead, he made the decision to avoid unhealthy snacks before he even got hungry. He set clear, structured routines that eliminated the need for willpower when it came time to work on important tasks. His environment became one that supported his goals rather than one that tempted him at every corner. This approach may sound simple, but it's incredibly effective. The key was to make every action count, even when it seemed insignificant. The small, seemingly trivial decisions, whether it was deciding to take the stairs or cutting out that extra hour of mindless screen time, led to major changes. By consistently making these better choices, Michael found that he didn't need to rely on sheer willpower alone. Instead, he developed an environment that made self-discipline easier, turning it into a natural part of his routine. The big takeaway here is that self-control is a skill you build by practicing small, deliberate decisions over time. These decisions might seem insignificant in the moment, but they accumulate, and as they do, you'll find that your capacity for self-discipline grows. The power lies not in a single dramatic act of self-control, but in your ability to stick with the small choices that lead you toward the bigger picture. As you reflect on your own life, think about the small choices you're making. Are they aligning with your long-term goals? Are they supporting your dreams? Or are they weakening your resolve? By shifting your focus to the tiny decisions, you can begin to change the way you approach challenges, and over time, transform your level of self-discipline and control. It's in these small moments that the foundation for greater success is built. So start small, stay consistent, and watch how your self-control, like Michael's, transforms forever. In conclusion, Michael's journey serves as a powerful reminder that self-control isn't just about gritting your teeth and enduring hardships. It's about making the right choices consistently, even when they seem small or insignificant. True transformation happens when you build habits that align with your goals, rather than relying solely on sheer willpower. Throughout his story, Michael found that the most significant changes didn't come from one massive act of discipline, or from forcing himself into tough situations. They came from embracing the daily decisions that over time shaped his ability to maintain self-control in all aspects of his life. It's the decision to move forward in the face of discomfort, the choice to say no to temptation when no one is watching, and the commitment to build a life that naturally supports your best self. Self-control isn't a static trait. It's not something that people either have or don't have. It's something you cultivate over time. As you practice making better decisions, those choices will become ingrained in your routine, creating a more disciplined and focused version of yourself. The more you practice, the easier it becomes. The power of self-control lies in your ability to make the right choices, day in and day out. One decision, just one, can set in motion a series of life-changing actions. Whether it's choosing to turn off the TV early, getting up and going for that walk, or opting for healthier food, every small action compounds into something much bigger. Over time, you won't even need to think about it. You'll be living your life in a way that reflects your deepest desires and goals, without the constant battle of willpower. As you move forward, remember that it's the little decisions made repeatedly that will determine your success. The life you're building isn't based on occasional bursts of effort, but on your everyday habits. So start with something small today. Start by making a single decision that moves you toward your goal, and do it consistently. When you see how powerful these small decisions can be, you'll realize that transforming your life doesn't have to be about big changes. It's about turning those little everyday choices into the foundation for lasting change. If you've taken anything away from Michael's story, let it be this. Self-control is a skill, not a burden. It's a muscle that gets stronger the more you use it. And the more you practice, the less effort it requires. With consistency, discipline, and small actions, you'll transform your self-control, and in turn, transform your life. The power to change is in your hands, literally in every decision you make. So what will you choose today?